And welcome to Counsel today with Shanrae, and I am Shanrae. And we're on week 3, part 2 of exposure. This week we've been talking about exposure to learned helplessness. And before I get started, I want to tell you again, this is an open forum. So if you're on here and if you have any questions, I will pause and I will answer your questions to the best of my knowledge. And if you have a scenario that you want to share, then feel free and I will pause and I will highlight the scenario or life experience that you want to talk about. So let's get started. This 30 minutes go by quickly. I am going to tell you that tonight we're going to be closer to 45 minutes on here because tonight I have to cover part 2, a whole lot of exposure to learned helplessness. All right, so let's get started. I am a degree counselor. I acquired my 2 degrees. It's a dual degree, Bachelor's of Science degree from Ashford University. I have a degree in psychology and one in organizational management. And so I'm a lifestyle strategist. I like my main type of therapy that I support is cognitive behavioral therapy, where we do a lot of hands-on things. My clients are children, families, and couples. And so my goal is to help and aid whoever my client is to become the most positive, the most successful person that they want to be. So that's who I am, and that's where I acquired my degrees. Again, I'm a degree counselor. All right, so let's go over my website disclaimer. And it says, please be aware that due to the nature of the technology that I'm using, there can be no assurance of confidentiality when using this online service. It should also be noted that due to the changes in policies, that all replies are to be used as advisory and informational only and will not constitute an official determination. Information provided by myself or other counselors or other counseling services are subject to the limitations of current and available material, but the final responsibility lies with you. For successfully achieving a goal, it lies with you, the individual. Information online is designed to be helpful. However, information does change frequently, and it is recommended that you, the individual, will consult another physician, another specialist, or religious leader to aid you in your overall behavioral wellness. All right, so we want to get started. We want to go on and get started. And I'm going to share this on a couple of different, so you're going to see me looking down quite frequently to see if there are any questions that are being asked. So let's move this on. I'm a Christian counselor. And so the scripture that I chose for this month, for this quarter, which is the second quarter of 2022, it comes from Luke chapter 12, verses 48. And it says, for everyone to whom much is given, of him shall much be required. And this is the amplified version in the Bible. All right, so let's move on to our definitions. Okay, and as you can see, this week, my subtopic has been exposure to learned helplessness. All right, so let's go to our definitions. I'm going to open this a little bit and then I'll close it back. Exposure. The definition that I chose for exposure is the state of being exposed to contact with something. All right, and then the next definition is, tonight we're going to be talking about dysfunction. So dysfunctional, and I chose these definitions. Number one, it says not operating normally or properly. And number two says deviating from the norms of social behavior in a way regarded as bad. All right, so those are the definitions for tonight. Again, good evening, everyone. If you have a question, feel free. I will stop and pause and I will highlight your questions. So, tonight, our key points tonight are number one, can a dysfunctional family become functional? And this is up under the subtopic learned helplessness. Number two says how to fix a dysfunctional family. Number three says dysfunctional or just average. All right. Number four says how to turn it around. Number five is the method of how to turn it around. Number six says how to prevent it. Number seven says priorities and clear thoughts. And then, of course, we're going to have our takeaway for the evening. All right, so let's move this along, and I'm going to open this up a little bit. It says, "What is learned helplessness?" And I wanted to recap on this from on Tuesday evening, and then we're going to move on into someone who's experienced the dysfunction or the coping mechanism of learned helplessness and how they can come out of this. Because again, everything stems a lot of times it stems from your childhood. All right. So learned helplessness occurs when an individual continuously faces a negative, uncontrollable situation, and then they just stop trying to change their circumstances, even when they have the ability to change. For example, a smoker may repeatedly try but fail to quit smoking, and they may grow frustrated and come to believe that nothing that they do will help, and therefore the smoker will stop trying altogether. But the perception that one cannot control the situation essentially elicits a passive response to the harm that is occurring, which means they just decided, okay, well, this is it, and this is the way it's going to be. And when in fact we can change our situation. All right, let me open this up a little bit. So the next question is, can a dysfunctional family become functional? All right. Can a dysfunctional family become functional? Um, and it said this theory, the theory that I got my answers from. I'm looking down to see if there are any questions or anything like that. Um, so this is a Mr. PhD, the therapist George Alonzo. He's a mental health expert. He's also the creator of the transcendental mindfulness therapy. He says that a dysfunctional family is more than disagreement or constant arguments. Anything from plain neglect to abuse and even verbal and physical violence is the everyday experience of those who are part of dysfunctional families. And what he's saying is a dysfunctional family a lot of time looks like this: parents constantly comparing their children. That's one thing. Siblings that are always in conflict, and because they're the bullying that's going on is tolerated within the family, domestic violence, adultery, and many other things up under that. So for all the members, this will mean emotional pain and even trauma, which in case it does not get resolved and will have a detrimental effect on the individual's personality and development. Now, when we first started talking about learned helplessness, one of the main things that came up when a person is in a stressful or traumatic situation, one of the things that they do, their coping mechanism a lot of times becomes where they just automatically just go to sleep. They'll just go and go somewhere else, or they'll fall asleep right where they are. And that is their way of coping with any type of situation that is considered traumatic or stressful for them. When they, it's, I mean, and that's their coping mechanism. So, but when they wake up, the issue is still there. All right. So, this is going to talk about how you can counteract something like this. All right. Um, so it says that this will mean that emotional pain and even trauma, which in case does not get resolved, will have a detrimental effect on the individual's personality and their development. Needless to say, that the younger members of the family are the ones that are most vulnerable, but that doesn't mean that the parents are out of danger. Okay, and most commonly, the parents play the roles of the abusers or the codependent, and in some cases, both parts inflicting pain on one another. So, likely to these problems, they stem from deep-seated issues, and that therefore it's pretty much impossible to deal with them. So, this is only true for families not willing to do what it takes. For if only a single member is determined and knows how to do it, the whole family can do a lot in order to progress and to quit or stop the dysfunctional type of behavior. So in this art of the article that I was reading, or of the what I was reading, it says that they'll break down basic steps of fixing a dysfunctional family, which I have here. So, although it may seem hopeless, it is possible to turn things around in a dysfunctional environment. So, if you ever have felt in this position, or if you know somebody who is, there is hope. A dysfunctional environment can be turned around. All right. So, how do we fix a dysfunctional family or a dysfunctional situation? How can we fix it? All right, and I'm trying to see if you have any questions or you have any life scenarios. I'm just looking to see, look down to see if I'll address it. So, in a few words, the solution for a dysfunctional family lies in dropping the egos. Everything is ego based. Focusing on the solution, switching blame instead of blaming. Let's talk about responsibility, and then doing the work as a unit. Okay, so for the good of the whole family. And this will accomplish things you once only saw as a dream. All right, so dropping the ego. Let's talk about number one, dropping the ego. Hi, Miss Barbara, how are you? All right, so in any type of relationship or family dysfunction, instead of going into the learned helplessness, how can we turn this around? Number one, it says dropping the egos, switching the switching the blame for responsibility and doing the work. What does this all mean? So it is simple in a nutshell. In that which will allow you to turn a dysfunctional relationship or family into a functional one. Okay. And let's take a look at how exactly this can be done. And so, and near the end, we will also talk about what can be done in a dysfunctional family with cynical traits. Because some people are just straight cynical when it comes to dysfunction. Everything is, it's something else. Okay, dysfunctional families or relationships are not only problems are well known, but also it seems like nobody wants to fix the dysfunction, right? Or openly decide to perpetuate the harmful behaviors. All right, so such as the case of an abuse and physical violence. There's also a solution for these cases as well. It's just not what you're expecting. So let's move on to dysfunctional or just average. Okay, because now there's a difference between a dysfunctional relationship, dysfunctional family, or just average. Okay, there is no perfect family, and everybody has something that they need to overcome. But functioning in harmful behavior, that's where the dysfunction comes in. When the harmful behavior or harmful behavior patterns, that's where the dysfunction comes in at. So how to fix, I'm sorry, dysfunctional or just average. So most families, and again, hi Esther, how you doing? If y'all have any questions, again, I'm going to pause and I'm going to talk, we're going to highlight the questions or the scenarios. It says most relationships or families are dysfunctional. Okay, so this is more common than not. And though at varying degrees of dysfunctionality, the milder cases are just marked by being, oh, this is just typical. Okay. Like for instance, it was talking about earlier about siblings who Esther said they need to know that they are dysfunctional because it seems normal if that's what you know. Yes, you're right. That dysfunction, it needs to be pointed out, and trust me, a lot of times it is, Esther. For example, when a child is in school, and teachers have to document everything. So when a teacher notices some abnormal, the abnormal type of behavior, you have to document it. You have to bring highlight to it, and then before somebody will just automatically take the children from the parents, there are steps that are taken. So one of the main steps are family counseling, and like you said, that's highlighting, or it's showing where that this behavior here, it is dysfunctional. It is not a normal type of behavior, but they will help and give the whole family strategies how to correct it before they just, the last resort is just take them out of the home. So you're absolutely right, Esther. Good evening, Sister Shirley. All right, so but the minor cases again are considered typical. Comically shrouded bullying or lack of interest in other members' development or well-being. I was saying a little bit earlier that a lot of times, if you have multiple children in the home, they will try to. A lot of times they will have some disagreements, but where the dysfunction steps in at is if it's allowed. If these agreements are allowed to be escalated and without the proper guidance from a parent or parents, then that's where the dysfunction sets in. Parents, a lot of times, they're there to help guide their children how to navigate through different things in life, sharing, growing up, where one child may be going into teenagehood and the other one is a lot younger than them, and showing them that, okay, you're in a certain age group and you may not have things in common anymore with your sibling, but that's still your sibling and stuff like that. So that's the navigating through certain things. That's typical. But the dysfunction once again comes in if certain harmful or abusive behavior is allowed. All right. So it says that you can know a family is dysfunctional if their interactions are anything different than cooperation, solidarity, care, and support. What I was just saying. But let's get more specific. All right. A dysfunctional family is one in which members directly or indirectly suffer emotional and or physical harm that's been inflicted by other members of their family, most commonly perpetrated by their parents. Okay, so that's where the dysfunction comes in at. Even harmful actions as passive as neglect, which is inflicted by inaction rather than action, signifies a dysfunction within the family. So abuse can be aggressive or abuse can be passive, where maybe the parent will just allow. Let me give you an example. I remember speaking with and it wasn't even a client of mine, but just having a conversation, and it turned more into kind of like a therapeutic type of conversation, and I just listened. But I was listening to the person at the time, and they were saying that they were getting ready to go out of town to be with their family members, and their children were really regretting it. They didn't want to go because they were going to see an older family member, and the older family member was a very abusive type of person, verbally and emotionally. And but they were saying that, I'm gonna teach my children. They still have to learn how to deal with this older family member. And I stopped and I said, so you think it's okay to place your children in an environment with an elderly family member who everyone knows is very toxic, very difficult to deal with, and you're teaching your children it's okay to just stay up under that because they're a elderly member in your family? And they was like, yes. And I said, do you really think that that's healthy? And it was like, well, it's an elder member in the family, and so everyone has dealt with it. And I said, okay, everyone has dealt with it, but it does not replace, even with that, it doesn't replace the feelings that your children are saying they don't want to be around this family member because of how they feel, that toxic, the toxic type of feeling. And they was just saying that that's just how it is. The family that we just always been around that family member. And I was like, wow, that's that passive, what that passive, what they're talking about, where you're placing you know, you're placing your child or someone in a place where everyone knows they're going to be abused. They're going to be, and that's a lot of emotional trauma and everything. And some people have their traditions where, well, that's you know, great, that's great auntie or somebody like that, but it doesn't make it right. And so this is what this is talking about right there, about having that passive type of abuse, or you know, allowing someone to harm your children. So so dysfunctional families, they say, normally have conflicts such as unrealistic expectations, kind of what I just shared with you all, a lack of interest in time spent together, sexism, utilitarianism. Let me say that again: utilitarianism, which means the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. Which means, if, like I was just saying, the whole family was like, well, that's just the way the elderly you know, relative is, so we all just gonna suck it up and just accept it. That's that utilitarianism. Lack of empathy, that goes along with the utilitarianism. Unequal or unfair treatment, okay. Disrespect towards boundaries, okay. Control issues, jealousy, verbal and physical abuse, violence, and even sexual misconduct or abuse. All of these dysfunctional families have conflicts with. These are the things that you see in dysfunctional families. All right, so it's now we're going to talk about the link to productivity, and we got a lot to go over tonight, so I'm going to be kind of rushing, but I will stop and I will address anything because it seems so. Okay, okay. The last question was with Esther. All right, so now we're talking about the link to productivity. All right, so you may think a dysfunctional family has very little or nothing to do with personal productivity, but you'd be wrong in thinking this way. All right, so if a person is not emotionally well, and let me blow this up a little bit so y'all can see this. All right, because this is very true. If a person is not emotionally well, he or she will not be able to perform as desired, as the emotional harm that has been inflicted will hinder everyday performance in the way of inability to concentrate, a lack of mental clarity, low levels of inspiration, motivation, and discipline. All right, so I'm going to say this again. If a person is not emotionally well, you will never, ever see or get um, the behavior, like more of a functional type of behavior from them. Esther says that she's decided that she will love and pray for from a distance, setting boundaries. Would you say I'm not addressing dysfunction? Hold on, let me. I'm gonna open this up a little bit. Hey, Mike. Hi, Mike. She said, would you say that I'm not addressing dysfunction? No, you are addressing the dysfunction. And what you're saying, Esther, is that this is the way they choose to be. You've already set your boundaries down through the years. If they didn't acknowledge your boundaries, then the next best thing is to separate. You're not avoiding anything. What you're doing is you're setting your boundaries. I'm gonna love you from a distance, like you said, but I am not gonna, hey Cole, but what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to place myself in a situation around you, because clearly that is their issue, but you don't make it yours. Okay, so no, you're doing the healthiest thing. That is the healthiest thing for you to do. And I'm glad that you said that. Okay. All right. So it says how to turn this situation around. Okay, how can we turn this around? And actually, Esther, this is exactly, hey Chipper. He said, love you from a distance. That's right. Um, so Esther, this is what you just said is actually one of the strategies that I'm gonna highlight towards the end of this, is loving you from a distance. Okay. I, this is my brother-in-law. He said, hey sis, do your thing. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. All right. So how are we gonna turn this around? So when you're part of a dysfunctional family, you know it. Trust me, the person knows it. You can quickly identify in other members the behaviors and conflicts that create the dysfunction. But just in case you're having trouble telling someone that's functional from dysfunctional, they said, I'm going to tell you, the theorist said, I'm going to tell you the following things. One of the easiest ways to recognize a dysfunction family is to survey your feelings. Esther, survey your own feelings, which is something you have done already, and that's why you came to your conclusion, because you surveyed your feelings being around them. We often overlook this, but have you stopped to ask yourself, how do you feel being in the presence of this dysfunctional people? Chipper said, pray for them and keep moving. See, once again, that's all we can do as us Christian believers. You can say a word of prayer for them, but keep it moving. Again, what does it just say? Survey your feelings. If you feel down and out, if you feel angry, if you feel frustrated being around somebody, I don't care if it is your family, like you said, keep it moving. Survey your feelings. Okay, as it says, as cheesy as it may sound, it really does shed a lot of light on this subject. What behaviors, actions, and attitudes in your family you wish were better. A lot of us wish that things was better. Chipper said, don't let go. What you say? Don't let G. Chipper. Okay. Can you finish what you were saying? You said don't let, and then you put the G there. So I'm gonna wait for the rest of it. Um, so it says, as cheesy it may sound, it really does shed a lot of light on this subject here. What behaviors, actions, and attitudes in your family that you wish that were better. And trust me, we all wish that things were better. Chipper said, don't let them control you. Oh my gosh. We're going to hit on that. He is so right. Do not allow dysfunctional or toxic people. Don't allow them to control you, your behavior, your emotions. Don't let them set you off. Don't let them change who you are, because once again, I'm gonna say this again, it's their issue, not yours. It's their issue, not yours. Okay. So sadly, they say you can't go back to the. Let me go back. So, do you think that certain behaviors and actions from your family marked us in the past? I'm going to ask that question again. Do you all think that certain behaviors and actions from your family have it marked? You think it marked you in the past? And I'm going to wait. Chipper said, don't harbor over it. And a lot of people who have a soft heart, you can harbor it, but it's not healthy. It is not healthy. Let it go. Let it go. Don't harbor over someone else's toxic behavior. Okay? So it says, sadly, we can't go back to the past and correct it, but we can do a lot in the present. Number one, correction is possible. And listen, even if the correction on them, if you never see correction on them, you can correct the way you respond or the way where you place yourself. Correction. What Chipper said, let it go. Let it go. He's right. So number one, in order to fix a dysfunctional family, you must start by putting an end to the behaviors and actions that are affecting you. Well, again, we're doing this in many ways. If you've talked to people and you've let them know, you verbalize it. We're going into this. Let me verbalizing it. She's okay. Chipper said, preach. Verbalize, verbalize how you feel. All members of dysfunctional families have one issue in common. They don't put a stop to the harm. Okay, now this is theory. This is a theory. I mean, long term, people have done studies on this. So, whenever you feel that your boundaries are being overstepped, there's just one single word that you have to remember. Cole, stop. Stop. It's okay to say stop. Okay, Esther said yes about being marked. You repeat things when you know better. You do better. Esther, when I say you all over this tonight, this is one of the things, this is one of the strategies. When you know better, you do better. I know that's right. Sometimes you just have to say, no, I'm not going to continue this way. Okay, now this is theoretically, now this is a long-term study right here. No and stop means the same thing. No and stop. All right. This is the door to a better, more functional relationship and family, because after this comes the fix. So, but first, Cole said this is good. Cole, you was on it earlier. Stop. Theoretically, that's the first thing you're supposed to say is stop. All right. So, but first you have to identify and make others know where exactly lies the problem. So go ahead and fiercely start with the word stop. Okay. Followed by your expression of dissatisfaction. So now put what you're saying to work in real life. Chipper said, speak to the hand. Again, because the hand, what does that symbol? It symbolizes stop. It symbolizes, this means stop. If you can't even verbalize stop, you can do this, and everyone knows what that means. Stop. You're absolutely right, Chipper. The hand. So now we're going to put this into work. In real life, it would be something like this. This is something you can say, okay, stop. Okay, now this is a scenario right here. Every time you belittle me, I feel you don't care. I need attention and respect, and it is your responsibility as my family member to provide them to me, or you can just say stop. When you compare me with my cousin or with someone, it hurts. All right. I feel like I don't matter, or that's not okay. I asked you to stop doing it. Or you can say something like this, depending on the situation. Please stop. Because when you start yelling, all respect is lost, and it turns into a battle of who can do it louder. Don't raise your voice, and let's work this out the way humans do. So, as you can see here, you start by putting a stop to the toxic behavior when it arises. And afterwards, you verbalize why it's wrong and what needs of you need to be fulfilled. So, that stop or the hand, that is the correct thing. That's the first thing to do when you're trying. Now, Esther said, sadly, there can be dysfunction masked under religion as well. Woo, Esther. And Cole said, or Jake Ducey says, that is not my belief system. I know that's right. You know what, Esther? Unfortunately, that is the case in most religious sectors. What you're saying with the dysfunction lies, and unfortunately, there are some people. You can see some cases where there's improvement in the religious sector, but a lot of times when there's not, then the person or the people that's a part of that congregation or parish, then they need to make the choice if this is the right place for me, the right place of worship for me, and then you can make a decision whether you'll stay or you're going to go. But unfortunately, you are absolutely right, Esther. Unfortunately, in the Christian sectors, you see more of the toxic dysfunction going on there, which has nothing to do with our God or who we serving. It has a lot to do with the people that are in position. But thank God we know better whether if this is the right place for us or not. Chipper says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That golden rule, but most people want people to do unto them, and they don't care whether they do unto others the right way. And that's when you know if they're worth your time and those things like that. So we're going to have to remember this one thing. Number one, it says we're going to start with stop. Then we're going to go tell them why it's wrong what they're doing, and then you're going to let them know what you need if you're going to continue a relationship with me. And this will also work well in the case if you need to do this with other family members or even with friends. So it's a family thing. A lot of people just say, "Oh, well, that's just how the family is," and that's it. Like I was talking about earlier. So dysfunctional family or relationship cannot be fixed by just one member. Remember, in a relationship, it takes more than just one person. Okay, so yes, a single member can initiate this progress and be the leader of the change. A lot of times by operating in a functionality. But in order to completely become functional, all members must contribute to this solution. So, in other words, you'll need cooperation. Cooperation is going to be needed. So don't be afraid for asking for it. Approach the family member or friend and ask them, tell them, I need you to listen. Sometimes we feel that our needs are not that important. As a matter of fact, a lot of times we feel like our needs aren't that important, or we simply believe that that people won't listen. But thinking like this would be like being defeated at an unfought battle. So you can't talk yourself out of this. It takes steps. You don't want to continue that learned helplessness. I'm just not gonna say nothing because it ain't gonna matter. It does matter to you. Whatever it matters to you, whether they change or not, whether they stay within your boundaries or not, you still express them. And if they don't function within the boundaries, then there's a way of escape. All right. So in other words, you'll need cooperation. So don't be afraid for asking for it. Approach that family member, tell them you need to be listened to, and then we're gonna go from there. You will be amazed by how much people listen. Cole, you'll be amazed how people will listen, whether they listen to you or they listen to another family member who expresses that where something needs to change. But if it was never expressed, wasn't never, then a lot of times change do not occur. Esther said she has a child that hurts her over and over again. She spoke on it. She didn't say sorry. She said, I need to let things go and get therapy. No accountability and no responsibility. Esther, you're going to have to move into tough love then, because that is your child. But there's a such thing as, and look it up, there's a such thing as parent abuse as well. Just because you're the parent, it doesn't mean that you have to take abuse from your child. So if they're not willing to take accountability or responsibility for their actions, their poor actions, then you make the decision to exercise tough love. You stand on your own boundaries and don't let it go. A lot of times there's different issues within family members, and I'm quite sure everyone has similar issues, similar, not the same, but similar. Cole said right. I have an experience with one family member who you're constantly contacting me, constantly. I'm your solution for everything, financially, constantly, you constantly asking me to resolve this solution. And I'm not your answer. So I had to change things with me, and I had to set boundaries. Now you can ask all you want to, but you're not going to get what you want because it became a crutch. And so and I know it's a lot of people that have experienced the same thing in family. That's a very common scenario. Okay. But boundaries, we set them. And if people they don't want to abide by them, they don't have to. But the boundaries still remain with us. And Esther, that old saying, I can show you better than I can tell you. That's an old saying, I can show you better than I can tell you. You don't have to say another word. The person don't ever have to, the child don't ever have to be, the grown child don't ever have to be accountable. But you know what? You're not the beaten post either. There's a such thing as parent abuse, and you don't have to take it. Okay? So it's not free for all battles. This is what it's talking about. Okay, let me say this. So you will be amazed by how much people listen when you voice your needs, especially if it implies showing yourself open, vulnerable, and in need. Cole, back to Cole. So glad you said stop. So glad the family member listened. Keep saying stop. All right. Okay. So it's not a free for all battle. All right. Esther said, amen. In order to get your family to cooperate, first you must fix your individual relationships with the members, with each individual member of the family. Remember, relationships are always between two people. Relationships are always between two people only. So you're going to take it step by step. I know they have family interventions. That's a group setting. That's a good way to initially start something. But one-on-one, it is imperative because everybody has a different relationship with a different member or family member or friend or whatever like that. So it has to be a one-on-one type of understanding. So no matter how complex the quality of multi-member relationships, like a large family or even a small one, will always depend on the quality of the individuals, each individual relationships. And once you have straightened the relationship with every member of the dysfunctional family, you'll be able to better communicate with other members and help in the betterment of their individual relationships. Okay. And this is where we're going to talk about how to fix it itself. We mentioned it earlier, the method. Let me move this over about the method. The method. Number one says drop the ego. In any type of staticky, when stuff start bumping heads and stuff, ego is the main ego. That's the main predator it within this, whatever it is. It's ego. Drop the ego. Okay, so wherever there's conflict, there is egos that's involved. Okay, you can't fix a relationship where there's ego, because the ego will want to win all the time. Yours and the other person's ego is going to want to win. Ego craves control and satisfaction, and in many cases, to establish dominance. So, what does this have to do with the dysfunctional family? Okay, everything, because ego will interfere with every plan that you have to fix. All right, so it'll make people stubborn and defensive, and it will also make them drop their responsibility. This is why the first step is to drop the ego. Everybody got to put their egos down. All right, or after you make sure you are not going to allow your ego to interfere with this repair. You must work to make the other person do the same thing. So, how can we do this? By speaking from your heart. Tell the other person how important all this is to you. Tell the other person that it's not a matter of arguing, but just working things out together. Point out how it is not possible for you to do it alone. Okay, in order to make this relationship work, it's not possible for you to do it alone. And ask for sincere attention without any desire of opposition, because what you're doing is by no means in hopes of harming the other person, but just to better the relationship and to stop the damage being dealt to you. Okay, you will have to point out the mistakes that you need corrected, and that's for sure. And that leads to this next point. Number two, don't blame, not blame, but responsibility. Okay, so we're not going to blame, but we're just going to talk about being responsible. So when talking about others' mistakes, we often use an accusatory tone, and that's natural. Who don't? Who don't? Accusing. You did. So it says what things should be like if ego was not present. But since we are all creatures of ego, all of us are. We all have big egos. Okay, this immediately brings shields up. People, them shields are up now, and then it sheaves the swords. All of a sudden, people they ready with the swords, and it's natural. We all are like this. We want to protect ourselves. We want to, So when we blame others, they automatically enter into a defensive state. And this only leads to a failed negotiation. So what you need to do is just shift from blaming to talk about being more responsible. Okay, and even that will have to be done carefully, because instead of telling them off or demanding change or complaining calmly, point what the problem is with their behavior. Point it out. Point it out. And as much of this feels contradictory, it also makes them feel that understood too. You know how difficult it is to accept a mistake. So just make them feel it's like it's no big fuss. It's not, which does not mean it's okay, but it kind of takes the tension off. So, I know when I'm having conversations with someone that's close to me and maybe something was mistranslated or something was miscommunicated or something, or maybe something was taken the wrong way. When we're talking it out, I say to them, listen, no worries. I start out, listen, no worries. No, things happen. And so we understand, and we're just gonna move on from there. But no worries. When you say something like that, it does take the tension off. No worries, don't worry, And so the goal is don't blame, but let's just talk about responsible communications, responsible behavior. Cole said, and when all else fails, silence is golden. Yes, and we're gonna get to that. Silence is golden. He's absolutely right. So you're gonna do something like this. And this is the scenario. This is a part of the theory, the research that I had, but this is the example that was given. It says, "Hello, Dad. Can I talk with you for a minute?" Okay, look, Cole. This is part of my research study. And this again, this is the scenario. It says, "Hello, Dad. Can I talk with you for a minute? I really need to tell you something. I've been feeling pretty sad lately, and I know this is something that you do care about. So you see, whenever I talk about my accomplishments, you mention something else that makes my achievement pale in comparison. I know you don't do this intentionally, and I know you might have not realized this until now, but I want to let you know this really brings me down. Okay? It would mean a lot to me if you could stop doing that. And it would help better our relationship, because this has already forced me to distance myself from you. And I don't want that. I want a good, healthy relationship with you." So this was one of the scenarios from my research that was mentioned. So what happened here? It says that in the conversation they started off by it's something important, something that needs both time and attention. Then openly show yourself vulnerable, just as we are. Then also mention why they should listen to you, and then shove our feelings there again because they are important. It's okay to say this is important. And then describe the issue with no attachment and with no hostile intention. It's just a description. And then take the blame off of them completely. Just before you assign the responsibility without actually saying it, because in the end you ended it with a responsibility. Okay. You say you're not blaming them directly, but what you're doing is you're pointing out the inevitable fact that the actions are causing a dysfunctionality, and that they're not responsible for changing those actions. This is what switching blame for responsibility means. What comes next? Doing the work. And I said we were going to go over 30 minutes tonight. Look like we're going to be an hour, y'all. But I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. Doing the work comes next. So what would any of this mean in the end if nothing changes? Exactly, nothing changes. And so this is why you got to follow up with every change that needs to be done. Do so in a manner that is not hostile. Bring it up in a casual manner and emphasize how you both reach an agreement, and how this agreement is very important to the family. If the person does not follow up, don't hesitate to bring it up again and tell them you feel disappointed that your honest try at it was not listened to. It may even be a subject in itself. But and therefore the need for another conversation. But when you go back to old habits, it shows that you didn't really care about what I said. This is how you address that. Cole said, "That would never work with my father, thus space and silence. He needs a timeout to think about his actions. Go to the corner, Daddy," respectively, of course. Well, listen, if that timeout works and you know how to get what you need, then continue to do the timeout. And the silence is golden, because now you know what works in order to get the boundaries met that you place. So I do like that, because every method, you have to fit a method, whatever method works for that relationship. You found a method that works for your relationship. That is so cool. Okay, um so we said to them, "I talked with you because I care, because although it would be easier for me to just distance myself from you, I'd rather do my part in nurturing our relationship. But there is just so much that I can do. And if you refuse to do your part, I can do nothing else." So that's where we're coming, Esther. That's what we're coming with. Coming to right here. There's only so much that I can do after you voiced your boundaries and and what's important to you. If they refuse to do their part, then there's nothing else that you can do. So you need to be very clear and positive. You need very clear and positive communication in order to make this work. Okay? So love is all you need. That's one of the things that they found in this research. It says love is all you need. Sometimes yes, a lot of times yes, but sometimes no. But I'm going to read this part anyway. It says you must remember that in order for a dysfunctional family to become functional, all the work needs to stem from love. It has to stem from love. So that is the single one requirement for all of this to work. Love. Now I do agree with that. And what happens if it simply is just not there? Okay, what happens if nobody is willing to do what it takes? What happens if the member of the family refuses to change and is happy with the harm that he or she is causing? There is only one thing you can do: break away. There we go. All right. Chipper, Esther, Cole, it says to break away. All right, let's be honest. People, especially adults, are very difficult to change. And when them egos are in place, it's, a lot of times people, they're not willing to change. So, but there is a Jewish proverb that the theorist quoted, and it sums it up like this. This Jewish proverb talks about how we spend the rest of our lives trying to unlearn what we learned before we were 7 years old. I must say that again. And this is a Jewish proverb. We spend the rest of our lives trying to unlearn what we learned before we were 7 years old. Esther said, amen, because I used to feel guilty not being the best parent, living in dysfunction. But how long must I apologize? That's another topic right there. That's another topic. All you can do, Esther, when you're discussing your boundaries, you just continue to start off by saying, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wish that I can go back in time and make better choices. But I was not in the right. Again, I think it's hard for our children, our adult children, to understand that we're not just their parents, but we're people too. No, we can't go back and fix what happened, but you're here right now, and all you can say is that I'm here to try to make sure that our relationship is way more okay. Thank you, Cole. I see that our relationship will remain healthy. Will start to be healthy and remain healthy from here on out, if you would allow it. But if you have to just continue to apologize, do it. Do it and come from a sincere place, which I'm sure you do. You are coming from a sincere place. Because there are traumas that our grown children have experienced, and being under our care, they don't understand, why it happened. And they're trying to figure out how to navigate through life. Like this old proverb just says here, a Jewish proverb, we spend the rest of our lives trying to unlearn what we learned before we were 7 years old. So you've had a lot of things, even being a mom. Back then, you were trying to unlearn some things from your childhood that maybe it didn't present the healthiest environment for your children at the time. But because you are better now, all you can do is just continue to apologize from the heart. I'm so sorry that you all had to experience this while I was still trying to navigate through my childhood. But I'm here now, and I'm willing to make sure that we have a healthy and happy relationship as a parent and child. And that's all you can do. And let them know that my prayer, I'm praying that we can sit down in therapy together and try to navigate through this, if this is going to make things better for us. So that's all you can do. That's all you can do. Esther, and we can pray that that approach will begin to work towards your daughter. But at the same time, you don't have to don't accept abusive behavior. Again, there is a such thing as parent abuse. You're not to accept that either. Okay. So if you find it very hard to change the very traits that make your family dysfunctional, or if it's simply impossible, you still have a card that's up your sleeve. And again, we said what? To break away. Although nobody likes to break away from family members, we must remember that we do have a responsibility to ourselves as individuals before any relationship with anyone else. Okay, you have the responsibility of making yourself happy and making yourself free. So, because you matter as an individual, regardless of any relationship that you have, be it family, friendship, or spouse, or romantic, your responsibility to you is making yourself happy and free of toxic behaviors and toxic relationships. So, now we're going to talk about putting distance. Esther said, Amen. Thank you. I offered for this $1,000,000 session. Listen, that's why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because my goal is to, if I can help whoever is watching, if I can help someone navigate through something a stressful or traumatic or dysfunction, then the strategies that I'm giving, I'm hoping and praying that this will make a change in your lives for the better. Okay, putting distance. So in case you're dealing with a family member who's simply unwilling, Esther, simply unwilling to change. Take both physical and emotional distance. Physically and emotionally, keep yourself away from them. And emotionally, or like you said, you said a word of prayer and keep it going. Just keep it moving. All you can do is just start where you are. Start where you and keep it moving in a positive direction. Because going back is so harmful. Okay, it is harmful unless you're in therapy and you're using strategies to kind of fix certain things. Okay. So what does the theorist say? Learn first to take their damage in a detached type of manner. You have to compartmentalize certain things. You're hearing, you're listening to what they're saying, but you can't let it tear you down to where now you're now toxic and dysfunctional. Okay? So don't let it hurt you further. Instead, take deep breaths and distance yourself emotionally. Don't be attached to feelings such as, why doesn't this person love me? It says here, why doesn't she love me? Or what did I do to deserve this? Or if he wasn't like that, my life would be perfect. Okay. Again, that's the blame thing. That's not the responsibility thing. So simply refuse to keep participating in this emotional downward spiral and accept, even if it's painful, that there is nothing that you can do. You can't make somebody want to have a successful relationship with you, but accept that even without that relationship, you're still whole, you're still worthy of love, and you're still worthy of respect. Okay. Let me move this along. uh yeah. Okay. And so they're their own responsibility. Like I said earlier, that's their issue. That's not they're responsible for their own actions. And you're not responsible for the action, but you're only responsible for your own. So decide what is best for you. There is a saying that this is where I'm gonna let me move this on how to prevent it, because I'm gonna blow this up. Okay, I'm gonna blow this up. There was a church mother that I went to church with years ago. Her name was Mama Zadie, and this is something she would say all the time. Okay, she would say that I choose to do better. I choose to do better. Thank you, Dee Dee Scott, for reminding me of this saying. Thank you. I choose to do better. That was her saying. And so this is what this theory boils down to, guys. This is what this here theory boils down to. The individual choosing to do better. We choose to do better. All right. So we're going to realize that it only comes down to two possibilities when it comes to restoration in family, or you may have to, like you said, break away. So, one, keep the relationship, and therefore, this is two things. You can keep that relationship and therefore accept the abuse from the person, or number two, choose. I choose my peace of mind, aka I choose to do better. Okay? So there are two things that whatever responsibility or in a relationship comes down to. Number one, keep the relationship and therefore accept the abuse. Or number two, I choose my peace of mind, aka I choose to do better. And don't let your mind fool you, because we often think that since we are all imperfect or we're not perfect, we must take the good and the bad behaviors of people. And we are especially forgiving towards our family members. But guess what? Guess what? We are also responsible adults who are aware and must own our own up to their actions towards us. Never excuse an abusive person, a negligent person, a violent person, or someone that's always committing transgressions against you or someone else, like your children. I'm gonna say that again. Never excuse the behavior of someone who's abusive, negligent, violent, or constantly commits transgressions towards you or anyone else. Choose your happiness. And if possible, also distance yourself physically, as it will increase your peace of mind tenfold. Okay, I'm gonna say this one more time. One more time. Okay, choose your happiness. No, I'm going to go back. Never excuse the bad behaviors of people. Okay, never excuse that. All right, don't excuse an abuser. Don't excuse someone that's negligent. Don't excuse their violence or their transgressions towards you. Okay, that's their issue. And if they're all right with living like that, that's on them. But we don't have to. We don't have to live with someone like that. Choose your happiness. Okay? Distance yourself physically, and it's going to increase your peace of mind tenfold. All right? So, how to prevent? There are two key concepts that you must bear in mind in order to prevent this dysfunction within your relationships and your family. Number one, to be completely aware of one's own mistakes. You got to own up to your own mistakes and don't allow them to impact others. And number two, make sure our souls, you know how people be like, so? Make sure your souls are also on the same channel before creating a family or having your own children. Okay, so what this saying is, once you recognize the dysfunction within you, okay, and you start your own relationship, your own family, stuff like that, don't get in a customer in the habit of saying, so what? That's just me. Don't do that. If it's ineffective, if it's toxic, work on you. It's okay to work on you to change that, to turn it around. It says dysfunctional families are the product of irresponsible paternity. Let me go back again. Let me say this in layman's terms. Dysfunctional families, dysfunctional people are the product of being in a home of an irresponsible parent or parents. For decades long, unresolved emotional conflict ends up surfacing in the families inevitably, and it will for sure harm those who least deserve it, aka innocent children. So again, when you see a dysfunctional child or a dysfunctional teenager, you better believe that behavior comes from the home. This is something that this teenager or child has experienced from their parents. Let's go back to that Jewish proverb. Most people spend the rest of their lives trying to get over and fix what they learned and was exposed to before they were 7 years old. They spend the rest of their lives trying to not be like, especially in a negative way. Okay, and again, the dysfunction, it starts from irresponsible parents. All right? And it's always innocent children that are affected. And then they become the same way. So we may notice that we went from talking about family to talking about individual relationships, then talking about you, the individual. So we went from them to us to me. All right. Why? Because in the end, You have the power to fix a dysfunctional family. Yes, we do. To correct mistakes, we have an hours, and to prevent dysfunctionalities if you don't have a family but plan to create one. We have the power to change. If the family members don't want to change, we still have the power to change our own selves. Okay, and we don't have to carry that on. Priorities and clear thoughts. Where am I at? Priorities and clear thoughts. So you may be, all of us have experienced some dysfunction in our growing up. All right. You may be a part of a dysfunctional family. This is a theorist here. But that does not mean that you are powerless or that you have to suffer the consequences of being a part of that dysfunctional family. We learned today, we went over today how it's all a matter of priorities and thinking clearly. We learned that if love does exist, everything is possible. We learned that even where there's no love and no fix for the dysfunctional family, there are still things that we can do on an individual level. It's a matter of choosing your peace because we deserve our peace. We deserve our peace. So everything will be better. Let me because I want y'all to see this. I'm gonna blow this up just a little bit. It says everything will be better if we apply this knowledge. Okay. So if you talk to that problematic family member, if you help them see the harm that they're doing, if you make sure that they do change and treat you the way that you need to be treated, if you choose yourself over that toxic family member, if you refuse to justify the harm that others can do to yourself or your family members, if you realize that the most important relationship that you have is with yourself, and lastly, that you also have to be aware of your actions and be open to criticism because we might be unknowingly, and this is what happens. Sometimes we might be the ones unknowingly harming other people. And that's because that was learned. It's called learned, learned type of relationship, toxic relationship. Don't allow, okay, and that would be us creating this dysfunctionality, starting it all over again. Don't allow it to happen. Dysfunctional families are not impossible to fix, and that's my takeaway tonight. Let me blow this up a little bit. This is my takeaway tonight. Dysfunctional families are not impossible to fix. It just takes love, cooperation, and responsibility. But if you tried and those elements are not present, just choose yourself instead, aka choose to do better. All right. So I have been on here an hour tonight, y'all. Oh my gosh. But this session, this research here, it was so important as I did my research on this topic, how we can kind of break away from learned dysfunction, how we can break away from learned being, learned helplessness. A lot of that learned helplessness with people, it starts again from your parenting, the parents that you came from. You're welcome, Esther. It starts there, but that don't mean we have to continue in that. Next week is my fourth and final week of Tuesday and Thursday night. I'm going to be talking about a different subtopic. I'm going to bring some of this over because the goal with these sessions, these quarterly sessions, are to highlight things that people are experiencing in their lives constantly, but also how to break away from negative type of mannerisms. And it is possible. Y'all know my saying. I believe that everybody can overcome any situation. Now there's steps to it. Some strategies may take longer than others, but I strongly stand on the fact that we can all be better. We got to put in the work though. All right, so let me go on. All right, so this is my website for those that want to know where I got my research from. I always put my website references here for fellow counselors or theorists if you want to see where I got my research and my theories from. Okay, I want to if there's a past Counsel the Day with Shanrae series that you missed or you just want to rewatch, you can go to my YouTube channel at Shanrae Price. If you please like, share, and subscribe, and then select any past series to watch. They're all together, Counsel Today with Shanrae. You can choose whichever one that you want to watch. Okay, I am a professional one-on-one counselor. I offer professional one-on-one counseling services. So if you're interested in professional one-on-one counseling, feel free to contact me via Facebook Messenger at Shanrae Cherie Price or via my email at shanraecherieprice@gmail.com. I'm a lifestyle strategist, and my aim is to aid you in your life's goals and your life's dreams. Okay, and I'm going to blow this up because we are almost out on our final week. I want to thank you so much for participating in tonight's Counsel of the Day. This week's actually with Shanrae. Next week is our final week, like I said. Next week is my final week. I'm going to be talking about a different topic. It's going to be still shifting over from this one. And then the next time I come on with Counsel of the Day, Shanrae will be in another 3 months. I'll see you August 2022. But y'all have a great night. And I look to see y'all next week, final week. Y'all have a great night. We ran over tonight, guys, but it was worth it. All right. See y'all next Tuesday. Good night, everybody.